September 13th and September 28th. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, new business, Lauren.
Our first two audit reports are follow-ups, so they should be pretty quick. The first one is the development conditions follow-up. This audit was done back in October of 2019, where we looked at the processes around enforcement of development conditions and specific plans requirements. We had 5 observations or recommendations in that audit. There were 2 high-risk ones and 3 medium-risk ones. Most of them were around communication and designating a specific department or owner of actually enforcing the specific plan requirements, as well as one for public works related to their authority in allowing for development conditions. All 5 were accepted. We sent Laura Henry, who was the original auditor on it, back out to follow up, and all 5 have been implemented. Any issues? Next one is our follow-up of the lobbyist registration and disclosures. This one was done back in October of 2019, and it was around the processes for ensuring that lobbyists register and disclose as required. There were 3 observations or recommendations for this. They were all medium risk. Elizabeth Andrews within our office went back out and followed up on these to ensure they were implemented. They mostly had to do with communication and publicizing certain information about lobbyists, and all 3 had been implemented. So are there any questions on that?
That's good. I'm glad people are actually implementing these things. That's good.
I'm glad you're following up.
Next is the audit of Nashville General Hospital with Human Resources, and Seth Hatfield is going to present that one.
All right, so we recently on October 28th released a audit of the Nashville General Hospital Human Resources Department. We have Delonda Payne here tonight, and she was our main contact for the audit. We appreciate the help that she gave us during the audit, and she's the Human Resources Director at Nashville General. So basically, we had 2 objectives with this audit. The first was to ensure the hiring process located the best candidates to further the mission of the hospital, and also that terminated employees were properly treated and displaced according to internal policies, laws, regulations. So for that first objective for the hiring process, we basically took a sample of job postings. We reviewed the interview documentation for sufficiency. We surveyed new hires that were brought on during the audit period, surveyed hospital leaders to gauge their satisfaction with the services they received internally by HR. For the termination process, we reviewed just a sample of terminations to ensure there was, a documented reason for the termination. We benchmarked the turnover ratio at Nashville General to other similar safety net hospitals, and we found that was in line with other hospitals. It's a pretty straightforward audit. We just had 2 medium risk and 1 low risk observations. The first observation had to do with 73% of external job postings didn't have documentation for the interviews. That's something that the HR department can't be in all the interviews. They just don't have the staffing to do that. So it's important that these leaders at the hospital, they're documenting their interviews so the HR department can monitor, make sure that people are asking the right questions, not questions that they shouldn't be asking, make sure that everybody got a fair shot at the interview, those sorts of things. So we just recommended that they, require that the hospital leaders document those results so they can monitor, and also provide training to hospital leaders. Just this is how you conduct an interview. These are the questions we need to stay away from because we'll get in trouble, that sort of thing. Observation B, the second observation, we did a survey. Both the surveys we did of both the new hires and the hospital leaders, they were pretty good. They were good, but there was some disconnect with. It seemed that there was some disconnect between what the leaders felt their responsibilities were in the process, their recruitment process, and what the HR's responsibilities were. So we just thought you might want to define those responsibilities, make sure everybody's on the same page. And then finally, the last observation, we found that there was wasn't a notification of benefits terminated for terminated employees. So if someone's terminated, they need to be let known in writing when they're going to lose their benefits. That's something that we do here in general government. We just felt that they should do that there too. And there were instances where we had a previous issue with an investigation where someone did lose their benefits, and that was a complaint they had. They said they didn't know, when those benefits would be terminated. So, and all 4 of those recommendations were accepted. So if you have any questions for me or for Delonda, I'll take those.
When you sent the preview out, I thought I read somewhere, but I'm going to mess up terms, but that there was a difference between physicians and non-physicians, whatever the other group of employees is called. But your audit looked at all of it, or just the non-physician pool?
I'm pretty sure it was, you remember, Delonda?
We looked at physicians that's actually employed by General, but not employed by Meharry. But you did look at everyone. Just doesn't do that.
Are you referring to, I think there was a chart. I think that's what there was a chart that kind of specified the breakdown.
That pool seems so specific and special. I mean, doctors think they're special anyways, but I just wondered if you were treating it, if it was appropriate to be treating them the same kind of way when you were doing your audit. But, I mean, you didn't find anything, so I guess it doesn't matter either way. But I just wondered if their process was different or if it's the same.
I feel like most of the positions in the sample were more on the administrative.
It was more of our administrative employees and not our physicians.
Yeah, so we didn't get into the physicians, if that's what you got.
Is there any comparison of the chart, in terms of the satisfaction and so forth? There were some higher numbers, some lower numbers. Is there any way to tell? I mean, you can certainly tell where there are certain things, certain areas that need to be addressed. But have we ever looked at other places that have that type of same thing and figure out how does this rank in terms of?
We didn't. We benchmarked the turnover ratio. We didn't really benchmark kind of the specifics of that survey. And also, I will note that their team out there does do a survey themselves every year, and so that's part of their strategic objectives. And so we're gauging their own satisfaction too. So they are.
Okay. And what are they supposed to? They're supposed to work on trying to.
Well, the main thing that it was favorable. I mean, you look at those results. It seems like most people responded favorably. The disconnect we felt that we saw was there was just the responsibilities as far as this is like job postings. Is that the leader's responsibility to post the jobs, or is that something we rely on the HR department to do? It's an example. It's just defining these are the responsibilities of the leaders in the process, and those are the responsibilities of HR.
Okay.
So it's mainly just clarifying what those responsibilities are, so there's no confusion.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is the investigation of Nashville General Hospital. This will need to be deferred one more time. I think as of this morning, Julie has started to send me the appropriate documentation that we need to finally get this one closed. She's not here today because she's at a conference this week. But she's been sending me, and I've been looking through, I think we have finally found the documentation that is needed to substantiate or unsubstantiate the allegation that we're looking into. So it should be done by next audit.
Hasn't this one's been deferred a couple of times, right?
It will be a year at the next meeting.
Whatever it is, I mean, we need to hear this. So how do you make sure that that all the documentation is in, so we can actually put it on we can actually address it, whatever the issue is, whatever, if it turns out fine, that's great, but we've been waiting for you to get the information, and so that doesn't sound all that good.
It doesn't. We keep it on here because it was a new item, and then since it was not closed, it has to continue on the agenda so that it's continuing as an old item. But at the same time, I think before each meeting, usually about a week before the day of, I usually get more documentation that's been requested. I think we've made requests since February, and it's just taken a while to hit on what exactly the documentation needed is. So once we start to go through it and we ask the questions, the follow-up questions, and get it from her, we can hopefully, like I said this morning, looking through what she is sending now should be the final documentation. I think that was one of the limitations in the working of the investigation. The original investigation was a lot of the communication was done through emails and trying to figure out what was needed. And we've kind of continued on that path, even though I've met with her a few times, but we're getting there.
Well, because I don't want to be difficult, I mean, we deal with this sometimes a lot, well, with the council sometimes, where we're waiting for information from people and they give it to us at the last minute. And then it makes it really hard for everybody to make decisions. And obviously, if today is the audit meeting and you get it this morning, you really don't have enough time to digest it. So is there a way to, I don't know, maybe you have all the information in. I don't, whatever it is, I'd like to go ahead and hear it at the next meeting and maybe let General Hospital know that we're going to hear it.
Okay.
You know, and it's up to you all. I just don't like, it leaves a perspective that something's not right. I'd like to get it before us so we can figure out what we can do to, if there's a problem, we can solve it. You all?
Agreed. I do agree, but is the problem with Nashville General? Because what my understanding is that they didn't think that this was information that they were supposed to provide, and so it was a third party involved.
That's correct. The original reason that this was continued is because at that meeting, their compliance officer stated that she had provided all the information, and that's why we continued to do it. After that meeting, the third party sent over, I think, eight unanswered emails. I believe the last one that they sent that said we have to finish this investigation. If we don't get it, the investigation will conclude. She did not receive, or from her stance, she did not know that it was sent. And so since we had asked for it, and she then provided me with one piece of evidence that was needed from our audit standards, even though it's an investigation, we're still going to look at the audit standards. Our audit standards, we then got something that could potentially change the outcome of that report. So we are required to then continue to go down that path, because if they have given us something that might change it, and it was the first piece that we needed, but then there were second and third pieces that were after that still had not been provided, and that's what we're chasing after at this point. So it is still a documentation issue that Nashville General Hospital has not provided until hopefully today.
So when you say that, it sounds as if Nashville General has been derelict. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think necessarily that. I think that there was just a miscommunication. I don't think that this is intentional by any means, and I think that there was a miscommunication that started this, and from her understanding that she had provided everything, and since then it has been follow-up after follow-up trying to get the information from her.
So for her to understand, because every meeting she's attended until now,
Yes.
So to me she's been very responsive and trying to provide the information that's needed, which all of that doesn't show in the results of us not having the information.
And I will say that she is responsive when she knows an audit committee meeting is coming up. As far as, I think that there are lots of roles and responsibilities that she plays, and that there's other things that take precedent over this. And when a reminder is sent about the audit committee meeting, that it's kind of like, oh, that's also going on, and I'm getting sent that information. Just because I think the necessary duties of her job are taking a lot of time away from this. I do think that she has tried to be responsive, but things fall through the cracks.
Okay. just want to kind of go back to that last question and conversation in regards to the Human Resource Department. And this is just coming from historical information of me having worked with them when it was under Hubbard Hospital. And it's a systemic issue where they've always not had enough staff to do the work that needed to be done. And that is typical when you're dealing with Black and brown communities. We learn to make something out of nothing, do things that ordinarily other institutions may have individual departments to handle every step of the process in order for it to be complete. And because of that, it does, it's almost unfair to evaluate the processes that are executed by a Nashville General Hospital in comparison to a Vanderbilt hospital, because there's a total different structure, and especially when you add in the salary and compensation and classification of the personnel that you have at both institutions. Not saying that it makes it right, but it is what it is. And I think in that particular way, we may find, so with her not understanding that there's a certain depth to what it was that she was supposed to do and provide to you, and it's just taken this long for her to come with it. And I just think that we have to understand we have to meet people where they are sometimes, and it's just not possibly a fair assessment to say otherwise, if that makes sense.
I think so.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Next is recommendation implementation follow-up. We had 10 recommendations that were due for November, and of those 10, 5 were implemented, reported as implemented. 5 needed revised dates. All 5 of the ones that needed revised dates related to software implementation or giving access to certain systems in one case, but all 5 are working towards being implemented. It's just that software implementation sometimes takes longer than expected.
Good.
Okay, next we have our project status. We have issued 12 reports this year, and we have 10 projects in process right now. 4 of them are in the draft report phase, but we are on track to meet our goal of 17 reports for the year. We don't have any current ongoing investigations.
When you talk about the year, it's not the fiscal year, it's the
It is,
annual year.
it is our audit plan year, so it is February through January. Yes.
Why not?
February through January? Who made that up?
I believe the former auditor. Metropolitan.
Okay.
Well, it's February 1st through
I'm just clarifying. That's all. We have many years. We have a calendar year, we have a fiscal year.
It's a year.
It's a year, okay.
That's usually a retail year.
All right, well, the council's going to start meeting from
January
pick
31st.
some imaginary day.
If you're trying to meet a goal, you need to be flexible with that period.
So that means in auditing terms that if it's not done within a year, you just extend the year? Is that it? So a year could be February through
What is a year?
July of the next year. It could be a year and a half, but it's a year in terms of, all right.
Sorry. I was just asking clarification on what the year was. And I don't know if I even knew that before.
The last thing is our budget status. We are at 18% of our budget. We actually have probably done more than that because we do have consulting fees that haven't been reported yet. But we should be able to maintain our
Seems
budget.
like our consultants have a hard time billing us.
We don't want
But
our
you
money.
guys, no, you don't.
No, it's not.
Okay, Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Do we have any other items on the public agenda anybody needs to bring up? Okay, so we make a motion to go into executive committee first, or do we adjourn the meeting?
Do they make the motion for executive session first, or?
But don't we do it at the same time?
Yeah, so.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the public and go into executive session?
So moved.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Public is adjourned.